Hello, fellow people. This is part 1 of my hypothetical rewrite of RWBY. Though honestly, the rewrite and title is just there for algorithm purposes only, as rewriting the show is not my goal with this series. What I'm actually going to be doing is a hypothetical reboot, using the hindsight of where the series is currently at to look back and improve in some parts of early volumes, fix some plot holes, explore characters, and more. The series is in large part inspired by Hypothetical Wings reboot by Ghost probably, but mostly in storytelling with speed painting style of approach. And the name too, it just works. If you're interested in Wings at all, please give Teddy a watch, they did an amazing job with their take on the series. However, as I said, we're not rewriting RWBY, we're only going to be giving its earlier volumes a fresh coat of paint. Now, you might be wondering who the hell am I? Who do you think I am to think I can reboot the series? Why am I swearing? And why it might be hard to understand what I'm even saying? Well, let's tackle those in random order. Hi, my name is Sunny. I'm an artist, which you might have guessed from a speed paint in the background. It might be hard to understand me because I have a strong accent and I talk fast, and that's exactly why I'm going to be adding closed captions to all of my videos. Just press the handy CC button to make it easier. Also, a fair warning, I get very mean when agitated, I'm a petty bitch, and considering the series I'm tackling, or rather more importantly, it's for some reason very dedicated hate them, prepare thyself for some rude comments toward that general direction. And what relation do I have to this series that makes me think I can write something to semi-reboot it? Well, I was in this fandom since literally a week after Volume 3 ended, which was fun. I'm also one of the rare people who has watched probably 75% of all RWBY reactions that exist on YouTube, maybe 80, but I do keep finding some buried ones once in a while. I also used to be an active lurker on RWBY Tumblr tag and several other sites before I got swamped with schoolwork and kinda lost interest for a while. And thus, I was there for most of the everything that has been going on in the fandom. The good, the bad, the very bad, the extremely bad, the awful, while also not having any of the strong attachment to the Beacon era or Montevision trademark, or all of the drama and personal headcanons made of lack of information like some people have. And during the last several years, I've seen a growing trend of the hateum insisting that the Beacon era was somehow better, which I, as someone who came into the fandom literally a week after it ended to steal the fireworks in action, do not get and probably will never get. Don't get me wrong, I do realize that many people enjoy the happy-go-lucky slice of life badass girls with giant weapons kicking ass. But that isn't what the story was about. That was always just a setup for future arcs before shit hits the fan and the true story is blown wide open. Yes, it was always supposed to be a rockball moment. And since I wasn't in the fandom back during that era, I also don't have the rose-colored glasses for it, just normal prescription ones. And I see a lot of things that would really benefit from a rewrite. And maybe that's why so many trigger-happy rooters keep screeching for one being needed even though the show isn't over yet. But funny thing is, they don't like the new volumes, not realizing that the real issue is in the beloved first ones. The ones with the shoestring budgets, the ones that were written on the fly with characters being added days before the episode aired to not have to come up with an escape sequence, where the fights were the only spectacle among the 3-minute long episodes. And it is charming in its janky early way, but it could use a retrospective improvement to pull it up to where we are now a decade later. Which is where I come in. Какой хрень мне вообще объяснять? Народ хавает все, что срет на RWBY, и не спрашивает этих недокритиков и квалификации. Такой хер я вообще должна делать длинное интро, объясняться, почему я не буду рвать и метать. Да похуй, хитер уже свалили на первой строчке, поехали. Let me say this again for the people in the back. I will not be rewriting the show. I'm not better than Monty, Miles, and Carrie. All of the major events, characters, relationships, story bits, and shit will stay the same. All I will be doing is filling in all the empty space that was created by limitations of the first 3 volumes, and connecting those dots to what we have going on in latest volumes in one neat spiderweb. Expand, not erase. I will only change what is absolutely necessary for a cleaner storyline and character relations. If I remember my plans correctly, so far I have only changed one major world-building thing that has been an issue that writers themselves admitted as one, more on that later, and about 4 character things for backstory and exploration purposes. The characters will stay as the show, but the changes to their backstory and, in a way, identity will help inform who they are, how they got there, and where they will be going next. But we'll tackle that when we get to them. We can turn all of my goals for this reboot into this neat little task list. Part 1. Expand events, characters, character relations, connections, filling in all the empty space volumes 1 and 2 have in the storylines. Did you notice that Ruby and Pyrrha have only talked to each other like 4 times before Pyrrha died? Or that Blake barely interacted with Juniper in the entire 9 volumes? The whole meme of her and Ruby never talking to each other? Well, Blake barely interacts with others in general, but that's a thing to tackle in her upcoming dedicated video. Point is, character relations and interactions are the meat of the story, its soul. Without them, the show would be boring as fuck and its plot pointless. Why would we care for a character dying if none of the other people in the story do? But thing is, all that care has to come from somewhere, and that would be the interactions. So my goal would be to use all the empty space between the shit we've seen in the show itself, fill it in with what they were implied to have been doing this whole time, but we never got to see for what I'm going to be calling shoestring reasons. And that's not me bashing the show or the writers, it's simply the limitations of the time, budget, software, and all the other things that were in play back then, but as two words. Thing is, this hypothetical reboot doesn't have any limitations. It's all my ramblings and drawing hand doing the thing. We can do whatever the fuck we want, pretend to have unlimited budget, time, software, and all the other shit that comes into making the show exist. And thus is the perfect playground to expand the first 2 volumes into what they could have been. And I hear some of you going, but Sunny, wouldn't that be filler? Filler is bad, some guy on the internet said at one time. Well, my dears, that one guy on the internet should go back to media comprehension school and learn what filler actually is. Tangent time. Filler is something that serves no relevance, consequence, or relation to the overall story. And by story, I don't mean the plot, I mean the show itself as a whole. In case some of you don't know, it's a term used to describe extra episodes that were made back when anime were made continuously and ran out of manga content to adapt. So they came up with the episodes of the week, which would be forgotten and its events and developments never referenced again. Like Saturday morning cartoon where the world could blow up and the bullies all got redeemed, but by the next episode everything is back to status quo and bullies are assholes again no matter the lessons they learned last time. That's filler. So no, Volume 9 is not filler, no matter how some people on the internet might piss themselves and screech at it. As long as something happens in the scene that moves forward characters, character relations and connections, storyline or world building, that continue to influence the story going forward, it's not filler. Volume 9 has all of those, so grow the fuck up and go back to TikTok where everything is simple and fast for your limited perception. Back on topic. There will be a lot of extra scenes that follow the pillars of storytelling, mostly using the pillar of character interactions, so we will need to establish a bunch of those for later. I won't be pulling them out of my ass, but out of the things that were already there or could be there based on established facts. Think of it as not having enough rope to connect where it broke, so you use another piece to tie them together instead. That being said, those still will be new or newish things made by me, so they can count as changes in headcanons. If it will be easier for you to accept the new things I'm going to be adding, it would be better to think of this project as a fan AU, like Duskgreen or Evermorrow, just with the core story and events staying the same, and only change being in recontextualizing them through my interpretations and new little details. Same goes for other pillars, storytelling, worldbuilding, and characters. And to help with those, we would need to use some of the gold too. Part 2. Insert as much of the supplementary content as possible into the story proper, where it belongs. Another guy on the internet also said that having supplementary content for a series is bad, and then his own series had to have a bunch of supplementaries to explain the stupid power system or how the turntables. Supplementary content is called that for a reason. It's extras that could be there or could not be there. It won't change anything to the story has to offer. It's just a neat little bit of content for dedicated fans. And RWBY does handle the supplementaries relatively well. At least for now, I'm worried for Volume 10, but that's a whole another can of worms. World of Remnant and soundtracks are usually regarded as must-watch, but honestly they're not that important to the overall story. They do their job as extras in only bringing more lore and character POVs respectively, which in turn makes them into must-watches. I've also seen plenty of reactions that completely skip them and their understanding of the story wasn't impacted at all, besides a few very minor questions. Now, the books in bonus series like Fairy Tales and Chibi, those can be completely skipped. Or you can read/watch them to get a bit more of whatever you want from them. Again, I am worried about Volume 10 and how the books will be implemented into it, but that is for us to wait and see when it comes. For my reboot, I will be using inserting supplementary materials as needed to fulfill goal 1 of expanding the first 2 volumes, but with its own set of conditions, because there is such thing as accessibility. Here's another handy-dandy list of all the supplementary materials that I'm aware of for RWBY and how I'll be using them and why. Things like World of Remnant and soundtracks, as I mentioned, are already considered must-watch, so why not turn them into a part of the story? We have plenty of empty space in volumes 1 and 2, and it seems like people who like Beacon Arc also like the slice of life aspect of it. We can add hypothetical scenes where I can actually go to class multiple times, which gives us free real estate to insert the information we would usually learn in war, which in turn would prompt characters to react accordingly with their personality or current events in the story, which in turn would make our hypothetical first-time watchers understand them more while also not being bogged down by exposition since all the character stuff dilutes it. For example, since Blake is hiding her identity, she would probably hesitate to answer in class a lot when it comes to Faunus, but other characters could, like Pira, who has commented before against Faunus' mistreatment, or Ren, who just needs more character moments in general, or maybe Yang, since she's a social butterfly and probably has a bunch of Faunus fans and thus at least a baseline understanding of what is being talked about in class, which would make on-guard Blake more relaxed around them. Boom, connections formed, characters develop more, in one war episode of the list. Now into other things. The books in particular are tricky because they aren't as readily available as war or soundtracks. With the exception of Fairytales of Remnant, which has its entire thing as a PDF on archive.org, praise their founders. I have not read the other 3 books though because they are not available to me, and I only know what happens in them via reviews and things circling around the fandom. Thus, I can only use what I know from that, which is very limited. Okay, I lied a bit, I do have access to PDF of the first coffee book, but the thing is, I don't really care about coffee and never have. And certainly not enough to spend hours logging through a book only to learn few things I already found out through fandom grapevine, like Coco being a lesbian and afraid of the dark, or Fox being confirmed blind and with a sassy personality and side assistant in his ear. And speaking of, that's the kind of info that should be in the story proper, like in general. Like, if I wasn't in the fandom, I would have no fucking clue who the hell Trivia Vanille is and how is she relevant. And I'm sure at least some of you just went, who? And that's not even mentioning other things that should be taken from books and explored in more available content. Things like Neptune's semblance, for example, and how he got it. It really could have been used to inform his character and give a slight lore drop on semblances in general. But again, shoestring reasons and hindsight. And I hope at least some of those will be addressed among all the other things Volume 10 would have to address, while also not retreading the same grounds, so book readers wouldn't have to sit through the same information, even though us who have not read books don't know the same information. This is such a complicated issue, and I don't know how to handle it properly besides, well, a reboot. Then we get down the list to the questionable canon territory, that being the games, which I know jack shit about aside from the general time frame it's supposed to be in, and Chibi, which I straight up won't use because it's just a series of non-canonical gags. And what little information they provide has already been given in other ways, like Ruby's birthday being on Halloween. Sorry, Grandma Valkyrie, you're staying as a gag mention and don't actually exist. The crossover movies, I pretend they don't exist either, especially after the funky tax write-up thing that got pulled. And the anime I did not enjoy? The only things I'll be using from that is how they pulled color trailers into the story, the first episode, and maybe Shion? But like an Easter egg mention, not in a major way. I do like their design and they're kinda cool. So yeah, they will exist, but only like a cameo. And lastly, there is Word of God, as in the things Ruby said before. Those I will use when possible, as it is Word of God plus shoestring reasons, but only as long as it doesn't directly contradict the events that happened in the story. And hey, that mean actually giving Beast proper early development instead of the ass-backwards messy, not exactly triangle that happened and then had to be reshuffled and denied in interviews despite the things that we can see with our own eyes. Speaking of... Part 3. Fix plot holes, inconsistencies, and scenes of the on-the-fly writing. Those would be things like adding proper foreshadowing, fixing some silly things in plot holes, clarifying things, and so on. So things like clarifying where did all the stolen dust go after Volume 2, tying in maidens early, the plot hole of Haven students not raising alarm over Em and Merc just infiltrating as their peers, when exactly does Wild Festival take place, and why is Hazel being a hypocrite, and so on. And lastly, the big kahuna of the goals. The only world-building thing I will be actively changing, because there's no way to properly fix it without doing other massive core story changes, which I'm trying to avoid. Part 4. The Faunus issue. Let's get the elephant out of the china shop. Just like this sentence, fictional racism plots are always messy, no matter the media. Especially when it involves the fictional race being animals, because of all the uncomfortable connotations that brings one way or another. I am not qualified to speak on this issue in detail, as you can hear from my accent, am a Slav and thus not the one to speak on this topic, but I can try to attempt to make this one plotline in this one show to at least make sense in its own story. Because as it is now, that's not achieved. We'll talk more about it in detail when it gets to Blake's video and all of the plot stuff relating to White Fang and Adam and Sienna and all of the Faunus. This is where the most changes will be, informing the world building in the plot and the characters while also not changing the core of who they are and what they will do in the story. Blake would still have her arc of running until she finds the courage to stand up for herself and her loved ones. Adam will still be an abused boy who grew up feeding on his own hatred for all of humanity and turned into a spiteful monster. Sienna will still be a leader demanding change and refusing to stand by and turn the other cheek, so focused on hits outside she never expected a hit from within. And Tyrion will still be a maniac, but not with the backstory. And oh boy, do I love the extra backstory I made for him. I hope you stick around and see what it is once we get to volume 4. Speaking of, maybe I should say something about how this reboot will work. Well, first we'll tackle the main characters, give them their own videos, explain what I did to them and how it will tie in with who they become later on. Then there will be a timeline video, or at least part 1, only covering Act 1, the Beacon arc. This way we'll know what very little canon material we have to work with and where we can fill in the gaps. After that, I'll do several more videos doing exactly that, while drawing all the characters that are relevant in those episodes, or the ones that you want to see, like Oz, Glinda, Teacher's Coffee, giving them their proper dues. After Beacon Arc, we'll do another timeline handling the mess, and then all the characters and stories that come in Act 2, like Witch, Oscar, Salem, Leo, and everyone else with all of their events, and how the perspective on them changed with all the legwork we did in early volumes. The further we go, the less changes there will be, as hopefully everything will be tied together into the spiderweb of a complete story, ready to see what the future has to offer. And for that, we need to start somewhere. The first letter, the first episode, the first character, or all of the above in this case. Ruby Rose. This series is in large part inspired by This series is... Водичка. Ох, как я себя задолбаю плямканье. And during the last several years, I've seen a growing trend. Сложнее, чем кажется. Особенно с моим акцентом. Volume 9 has all of those, so grow the fuck up or go back to tick-tick. 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 Tick can also talk. By the popular saying, $K $sign ха. Блять, еще голос не ломался, было вообще шикарно. Вот. World of Remnant. Блять, я не могу выговорить это слово, твою мать. World. Не word. World. World of Remnant and soundtracks are usually regarded as must-watch, but honestly they're not that important to the overall story. They do their job as extras and only bring more world building. They do their job as extras and only bring more world... Я заменю это на лор, потому что я это не могу поговорить. Я не могу выговорить это слово. World building. Сука, не могу. World building. Да ну его нахер, просто будет лор. Все. Лор я хотя бы выговорить могу. Сейчас будет прикол, если я не смогу выговорить лор. Seems like World of Remnant. Things like World of Remnant. Бля, когда я ее могу выговорить, я почему-то не продолжаю предложение. У меня теперь уже и на русском тоже у меня все плохо. Твою нехай. Ой, блин, надо уже... Сколько тут еще осталось? Ёбаный рот, мне еще сколько записывать. Because there is no way to properly fix it without doing other massive Corey in the house. Because there's no way to properly fix it without doing other massive. We're from the west over here. Сука, не могу. And that's the video. Sorry for the shitty audio quality. I literally don't have a mic. It's just literally just me recording on my Mac. So yeah, this will be janky. And considering that my accent is so strong and I can't enunciate at all, it will be painful. So I really do encourage you, if you somehow manage to still listen to the entire video without the subtitles, please turn the subtitles on because yeah, you would need them. So yeah, the next video will be about Ruby and then gradually all of the rest of the team and then Juniper, and I don't know when they will be coming out exactly because like I have work and then other projects like my comic, which if you like the illustration in the background, then please consider checking out my comic. I'm working really hard on it and like it barely has any views which is tragic. And like tell me where can I improve, like maybe suggest something, I don't know, like some YouTube videos that will help me with, I don't know, proper enunciation. So I can at least read my own fucking scripts without tripping over words and like actually pronouncing half of them. Like I cannot pronounce the word world. Like I struggled so much with World of Remnant, like I still can't pronounce it properly. Oh my god, why did I decided to do this? My accent is so thick. Yeah, I'm just rambling at this point, so like I don't know what our proper YouTubers are doing that don't get like 2 views and then 11k on a random animatic one time and then another 2 views. I don't know, like, subscribe, share, and I hope you say some nice things. Episode 4 and 5 and 6, they will be very fucking controversial, so maybe you should save all of the strong mean words for when we get to those. Because trust me, you will need them if you have really strong opinions on some of the characters and plot lines and let's be honest, ships that I will be tackling in those videos. Oh my god, they will be such a shitstorm. I can already hear the typing. So like, I'll see you on the other side. Bye.